congressman for Minnesota's 1st District for 12 years, and now sharing his thoughts with us on the Al Travis Show. It's Congressman Gil Gutknecht.
Love having him on the program. He's Congressman Gil Gutknecht. Congressman, how are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing well, thank you.
You are a good golf friend of mine. I've golfed with you. I enjoy golfing with you. I know you do it a lot. How's your golf game?
Up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
I mean, one day I'm lights out, the next day I can't seem to find the fairway. So, it's golf, but it's great exercise. It's great fresh air and an opportunity sometimes to play with friends and have some fun. And as long as we're talking about golf, let me get in a little plug.
Okay.
It's already sold out, so you can't play golf, but the Tee It Up with the Troops event in Rochester is August 14th at the Willow Creek Golf Course. And for those who would have interest, you can still become a sponsor. You can still contribute. But most importantly, you can come out to the honors ceremony that they have starts at 11:15. That's on August 14th. You probably need to be there by 10:30. But it is one of the most inspiring things that I participate in every year. They bring back, I don't know how many World War II veterans will be left by August 14th. Yeah. They're all into their 90s now, but it's so wonderful to hear their stories and what they did. They were 18-year-old kids right off the farm, and all of a sudden they're thrown into the maelstrom of war. To hear their stories, and then they honor the Gold Star families. It's a fabulous ceremony. So if you get a chance on August 14th, get out to Willow Creek by about 10:30 and just enjoy and come to a better understanding that freedom isn't free. And as Jefferson said, that the tree of liberty has to be watered regularly with the blood of patriots. And you get to be reminded of that. So thanks for letting me get that plug in.
No, and Rochester does a great one. They do. I know they have one in Mankato. I presume in a lot of the other cities when they have it as well. I don't know them. I don't have it offhand. If you have one coming, and Rochester or Mankato I know has one, send it to me, al@altravisshow.com, when yours is, and we'll plug that as well, because this is one fantastic deal. Saw it in Mankato one time. Dry eye in the place, say no. al@altravisshow.com. Let me know where yours is, and we'll plug it as well. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you very much, sir. I had a question for you, reading through the things going on in Washington list today. And one is, we just got done with the reconciliation bill. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. I don't know how thrilled I am with it, but we'll find out as we go. They're already talking about getting the next reconciliation bill in, as long as they're on a roll here. Can you describe what's a reconciliation bill compared to just doing a finance bill, just making a bill and making a law? What's reconciliation compared to all the rest? Can you tell me what that is? Describe it to me.
Well, first of all, you have to understand the arcane rules of the Senate.
Okay.
In order to move an ordinary appropriation bill or an ordinary bill that deals with, and I'll get into what the subjects have to be, but there are certain bills that have to have 60 votes to move forward. And right now, the Republicans, Senator Thune, cannot count on any Democrat votes to move some of these things. So the only thing they can do is reconciliation that can move with 50 votes. Reconciliation deals primarily with tax issues and with spending like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, entitlement spending, things that go on automatically, whether or not Congress takes any action this year. The regular appropriation bills, are good for a certain period of time, generally 1 year. Okay. And so those can be dealt with in the ordinary process of legislation, and they require to get 60 votes, to get cloture, what they call cloture in the Senate, they have to have 60 votes. So when you want to deal with things that are really sensitive or tax issues, real sensitive, meaning Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, other entitlements, you have to do that through reconciliation. And so what the Speaker is saying is that they may have some additional adjustments that they'd like to see made either on the tax side or on the entitlement side of federal spending. And I think that's a good idea. I think you look at where we are, for example, with Social Security and Medicare, they're going broke. And that's not a secret. I mean, every expert that's looked at it. And so we're going to have to make some adjustments. How far and how much the speaker has in mind that he might want to, tweak those programs, I don't know. But clearly they have an agenda. The other thing that's good about what Speaker Johnson has said in the last couple of days is that they are going to take up at least one major and perhaps several minor rescission bills. And now a rescission bill is where spending has already been authorized and appropriated by Congress, but they go back and say, no, we're not going to spend $100 million on this program. We're not. This is basically what DOGE, many of the recommendations that DOGE has made. So what he's making clear is, no, we're not done on the spending side. And then we're going to come back and we're going to take back some of the spending. And he also indicated that when they do have their regular appropriation bills that come through, the House at least is going to take a very serious look at limiting the growth and in some cases actually cutting spending. The Department of Education may be one of them, where they're going to take a big axe to the Department of Education. And let me just get in this point, because I think most Americans don't know this. When we first established, I think under Jimmy Carter, the Department of Education, the United States ranked near the top of all the industrialized world in terms of the quality of education. We have dropped virtually every year since we've had a federalized Department of Education. And so I think there's a growing list of people who think, maybe the idea is to return the control of education back to the states and to the local communities and get parents and local folks much more involved in the quality of the education that they have. Governor DeSantis has now stepped up and said, look, even in accreditation for universities, the states can do a better job than these national associations, which seem to be far more interested in, woke activities than they are about the quality of the education that our students are getting. So that may be one that you'll see a meat axe taken to.
Yeah. Is there enough political might with the right to do either one of those? And what I mean by that is Medicaid. They did some changing to Medicaid. As I understand it, Medicaid seems exactly the same. It's who gets it or not has changed. We're hearing in the paper, we're hearing people talk about the deaths in the street. People are going to die in the streets because of what just happened here. The Department of Education, when he first started talking about ridding the Department of Education, the Minnesota Department of Education here, and all the teachers, oh my goodness, you're going to crush kids. You're going to take away kids with disabilities able to go to school. And they just start blowing this thing out of shape. And then as soon as the Department of Education comes out and says, you know what, here are your new rules, no DEI, in Minnesota said, we're not following that. We don't believe that. So either you want the people in charge to tell you how to run things or you don't. And in reality, they just want the money and they don't really care what anybody's saying. My point being, I guess, is the papers and the people in charge skew this stuff. Both can't be right. Medicaid can't not be cut, and at the same time, people dying in the streets. But that's what we're getting out here, those of us that don't read the bill.
Well, but at the end of the day, facts are stubborn things. And the facts are that, that all they're really doing is limiting the eligibility for Medicaid to people who were originally the ones we designed Medicaid for. And you can cry wolf only so many times. I think the general public pretty much laughs off a lot of these nebulous arguments that are raised by the people on the left, even with education. The bottom line is, I think a lot of the educationists, I like that term, educationists, what they really want, as you mentioned, they want the free money from Washington. But more importantly, they want to be able to say, well, we have to do this. It's a requirement from the Federal Department of Education. Yeah. Well, in some respects, there are things that they want to do, but they don't want to have the responsibility or the accountability for, some of these woke policies that are coming down from the Federal Department of Education. And I think that's true throughout, all the states. They like to shift the responsibility, but they like to keep the money coming.
But everybody gets so scared. Back to the Republicans have enough kahunas to do this. Social Security is another one. If you go back to what Social Security started as, right, a forced savings account, you put this much in, it grows so much, you're going to have something out. If we just went back to what we started it as, there's enough money for it. The problem is we give it to a whole lot more people than who pay in, and much more than they ever paid in plus interest. That's where it goes south. Does anybody have what it takes? Because we've been talking about Social Security for 30, 40 years going bankrupt. No one wants to touch it. No one wants to rip that Band-Aid off.
Well, that's true, Al, but I think we are reaching a point. I always like to say that Winston Churchill said it best, Americans always do the right thing once we've exhausted every other possibility. And I think we're reaching the point with Social Security and Medicare and so forth. I think we're reaching the point where it has to be discussed, and it has to be discussed by sober people. And will they be able to pass anything this year? Probably not. But the fact that they're hopefully going to bring it up and talk about it, ultimately, I think what will have to happen is they'll have to have a commission, and that commission will be given broad powers to determine, what we need to do to make Social Security solvent for the next, the next generation at least. And I think this commission you could have a separate commission to deal with Medicare. I think in both cases, we need to look at a number of things. And, it's not the sky is falling, but it's time that we do something. And I think we will do the right thing ultimately. I hope we won't wait too long so that the remedy and the treatment for this will be so severe that people will really feel it. I think you can make changes today. People are living longer. People are working longer. I think we have to acknowledge that and somehow get our retirement system to square with what our population is and what it's doing today.
That's fair enough. Let's go to break. One I want to talk to you about because I think some of Donald Trump's sheer base, and I would use that Charlie Kirk TPC or whatever it's called is Turning Point USA, TPUSA, had a meeting this last weekend. They brought up the Epstein files, and they are very upset. Everyone in that room was booing and hooing and hollering. I think he's going to have to deal with Epstein one way or the other, and I don't think he's allowed to say, nah, there's nothing here. Let's talk. Can we talk Epstein on the other side? Do you mind? Kind of
I guess we have to.
I did introduce it, didn't I? We'll talk Epstein after this with my buddy, Gil Gutknecht, Congressman from the 1st District.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
Dust from gravel roads and driveways does more than make your car dirty inside and out. It gets down into your lungs, and it's bad for your health. Now there's an environmentally friendly solution for your dust problems. It's called DustLock. DustLock can control all your summer dust problems with just one application. Protect your vehicle and your lungs. Learn more at dustlock.com.
Easily offended? The Al Travis Show is not for you. The Al Travis Show. All sides are welcome.
And we've got Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the program. Walking softly with this, when the Epstein files, the Epstein case, seems very weird to me. We were promised with Bondi and Trump that we're just going to open everything up. You're going to see everything. Don't worry about it. We're going to have there. I believe Bondi even said, hey, I've got the list on my desk. I'm going through it now. And then last week, they come out and say, nothing to see here. There really was no list. Epstein killed himself in his cell. We're going to move on. Trump even yelling at some reporter for asking about it because what are you talking about that for years ago? Then Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA had a big convention, which is the right wing of this party, and he brought it up, and there was boos. The very right wing has no time for this. Don't worry about it. We've looked at it. It's okay. Where does Trump go from here? Does he have to open this up for everybody to see?
No, he does not. And here's the interesting thing. Well, let me go back a step. There was a president of the United States, I think it was Rutherford B. Hayes, who refused to debate his political opponents. And they asked him why. And he had a great answer. He said, because I have to think before I speak. And if you go back, whether you're talking about the president or you're talking about the attorney general or you're talking about Dan Bongino, they should have thought before they spoke. Okay. I think people need to take a step back. There is a term that we need to use here. It's called discretion. And when you're talking about legal issues, there's something called prosecutorial discretion. And I think as we look at what happened was, I think the president, and we don't know all that the president knows, and we don't know who all the president has been talking to. But I know one person that has the ear of the president of the United States, and his name is Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is a legal scholar, considered one of the best legal scholars in the nation. He has become a defender of the president of the United States. Yes. And oh, by the way, the rumor is that his name was on the list of people who had flown on the Epstein airliner. And he's one example. And I think there were other people of influence whose names may have appeared on the list of flying to Temptation Island. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they just flew from New York to Los Angeles. I don't know. The president of the United States himself, I mean, the rumor, and I think it's a founded rumor, the president, his wife, and his daughter flew with Epstein from New York to Florida once. So their names are on the list. Mm-hmm. The problem is there are probably prominent people whose names are on the list who didn't do anything that was in any way wrong, colored. Okay. But by having the list public, all of a sudden, all those people are exposed to a level of public indignation that they may or may not deserve. The second part of this that I think people need to be aware of is that the evidence is old, and some of the evidence may have been destroyed. Mm-hmm. And finally, I think people need to be aware that that in terms of the events, many of the events are more than 20 years old. Yep. And they, it's really hard to prosecute anybody for something that may or may not have happened 20 years ago. And the evidence is sketchy. And at best, it comes down to he said, she said. And so I think the president looked at all of this and said, there are a whole lot of other big issues that the Department of Justice and the FBI need to be looking at. And we're not going to expose people like Alan Dershowitz and perhaps Bill Gates, I shouldn't use those names either, but they have been mentioned, okay? Yeah. And all of these people are going to be subjected to a level of scrutiny that they may or may not deserve. And so he just said, to heck with it. Now, the way they handled this was beyond childish, okay? No. They should have had a plan of how they're going to roll it out and say, look, the evidence is old. Some of the evidence is missing. There are people on the list who as far as we know, committed no crimes. And as a result, we don't think that any of these crimes, potential crimes, could probably be, if they would have handled it differently, this would have all been over. But the way they handled it was beyond ham-fisted.
Okay, and I got to fly. We're out of time. I honestly believe something has to happen. We have to either know there was child raping going on, child whatever's going on, molesting going on, that this was going on, and if it was, someone has to take the fall for that. And you're going to say Epstein did. What about Gianni or whatever her name is, the Maxwell gal? Somebody's going to have to be held accountable. Otherwise, the people are going to say, if you're just rich and famous, you can get by with really bad things. So I think we have to find out what happened down there, whether that really happened, and if the stuff is too old, the evidence, and we can't get a prosecution, great. At least we can all know what was going on down there. Right now, everybody's minds run with the worst thing that could possibly have ever happened. If you're on the list, you're a horrible person. We need to find out who the bad people were. If they were, we need to prosecute them if they did. Otherwise, rich people get by with stuff. That's what we're going to think.
That's assuming you can prosecute.
Yeah. Again, I don't disagree with you. It's not easy, but they told us the whole list was there. We're going to find it all. Now they pull it back, and it seems sketchy at best. I got to fly. I appreciate your analysis of it. I think you're absolutely right. We got to fly. Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the Al Travis Show. Appreciate you, my friend.